We're back with another episode of Hacked by Halftime, and I am thrilled to have Miss Diamond Frazier on the show. She is the president and CEO of Better Than Yesterday Mentoring, and we actually linked up through LinkedIn. And she came into the space. She saw some cyber risk in the NIL space and dropped a comment about open source. And I was like, she knows what she's talking about. I need to have her on this show. And since then, it's been awesome, the conversations that we've had. So, Diamond, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here. You are in a very unique space. I have not seen this in the sports world. You're doing amazing work. And like we talked about a little bit off air, you are well ahead of your time, very much a need. So I look forward to being able to contribute to the conversation and follow your journey as you're infiltrating these spaces and really saving a lot of lives and people. Seriously.
That's awesome. And I want to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself and what you do because one thing that stood out to me is your mission, right? You say it's simple, read it, and I'm like, oh my gosh, there's a lot to unpack. And you're doing such great work. And that's your mission statement of help people become better than yesterday and build the future that they were called to live. So, if you want to introduce yourself and how you accomplish that mission, I know our audience would love to hear that.
Yes, thank you, thank you. So as you said, I am Diamond Frazier, Diamond B. Frazier, founder and president of Better Than Yesterday Mentoring. So we teach personal development and financial education to primarily high school students, student athletes, and those in college as well. But we are open to everyone because you really need it at any phase in your life. But you are right, as long as you are being better than yesterday, just even an ounce better, then you are progressing in the right direction. And I know for me and everybody, mentorship is really needed no matter what space in life that you're in. And a lot of mistakes that are made, there are trial and errors, but there's some things that don't have to be mistakes if you already had known ahead of time. And so we're capturing the youth at a time where they're most vulnerable and impressionable to really help guide them. As you graduate high school, you're 18 years old, legal age of an adult, but it's still a teenager. You still don't know. You need that help to navigate. So we're not going to be able to help them with everything, but we're covering a lot of base. So once you leave high school, or if you're in that age, you'll feel a lot confident on navigating those spaces in life. And so I'm very passionate about it. I've had some mishaps in life that simple conversations could have fixed. And so very passionate about it. Any space that I can get into to really help and assist people, we are 100% there.
And you bring up such a good point about high school too. Now with high school NIL, and then even the transition as they go into college at that young age, they're essentially a walking LC now. So to get that education before they get to college and have all this money thrown at them, I think is so important as you stated.
Yeah, it's definitely a need for sure because, when you're young and you're excited about sports, you're just zeroed in on that one thing, just being great at that sport. But there's so many things after. And one of our main things that we teach in the program is identity building. You need to know who you are. Sports is just what you do. Podcasting
Mm.
is what you do. Everything external, they're just things that you do, things that you experience, but they're not who you are as a person. And when you don't know who you are, you become so vulnerable to many different things, maybe adapting different personalities, shifting and going where the money is because you have to be this thing. And so before you tap into anything, you need to know who you are, what you stand for, what your morals are, what you value, and not compromise on that. And so very heavy conversations. And sometimes it's not the easiest when you ask a young person, what do you value? It's like, my family. It's a very
Yep.
heavy question, but once you explain it and you give examples and you start to relate it to their life and how they spend their time, it becomes more clear for them. But really knowing who you are at that time is very important. And I know, especially in the high school space, you don't know who you are. You're figuring it out. You're adapting different personalities. You're figuring out the trends, what's getting more attention, what's not, what's cool, what's not. And so it's a very rough time for a lot of people.
That's such a fascinating question, right? Because there's people who chase their whole life trying to figure out who am I? And then on top of that, like you mentioned, you have the athlete profile, which is probably like what gets you all this social media and gets you all this attention and money. But that's not necessarily, you might be an introspective person on the outside who likes poetry and things of that nature, but that doesn't sell as well. So you have to kind of have that. I don't want to say two identities, but it is kind of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's cool. I know we've been following the Knicks and the Spurs, and to just see Wemby just drawing and being into the arts and just seeing a different side outside the sport. Like people want to see that as well. And as you know, you can't play indefinitely. Everyone has an expiration date in their sport. So what are you going to do next? How are you going to navigate? What are we going to learn about you outside of that sport and what you do? So it's fun seeing the little videos of him randomly doing just normal things. It's very interesting. So what is it about you that's interesting? What is your normalcy? How are you relatable? Who are you? And so figuring that out is very fun. And when you do figure it out, it's a very powerful thing. Because when you ask a person who are you, normally they start with my name is,
Yeah.
or I do this thing, versus I am a servant leader. I'm someone who enjoys helping people. I'm someone who, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Is really getting into like the depth of the soul, right? It's your identity as you stated. So it's not, hey, I'm a football player or I'm a cheerleader and I've memorized this muscle movement to make this thing occur. It's like, hey, deep down, this is who I am and this is what I love. And it's just so, it's such a cool space because I can only imagine how rewarding it is when you have a high schooler or a college student or even an adult be like, wow, that door has opened inside of me and now I know who I really am.
yes, we just finished our cohort. It was a 6-month program called Empower 360. And the students, they meet twice a month for 2 hours, very intensive session, but they're matched with a mentor during that 6 months as well. And our end of the year celebration, which was April 25th, I mean, the waterworks.
Oh,
It was amazing to hear the stories. I mean, these are students that don't really want to speak. They come slouch, very, not really confident and sure of how they are. And when I asked towards the end, who wants to speak to their experience, all hands went up and I was
oh,
shocked. And so hearing the speeches on, if you look at them, we have some of them on our Instagram page, BTY Mentoring. The consistent theme has been, I've learned who I am. I know how to answer that question. I've been able to navigate that. I never thought to myself, who am I? But I'm leaving this program more confident, able to answer that question, and to know that you have these core things on who you are, but new information brings new perspectives. So you may change and alter through your journey. So helping them navigate that as well, that you don't have to choose one identity and just hold so tight to it. But you need to know what you stand for, what you believe in, and have
yeah.
a foundation there. But you are able to grow and you can change.
And I think that's so important because I think a lot of people hold on to a certain identity when they get 18 or 19. And as a result of that, like you said, they never grow. And I've seen it time and time again in the military. And it's funny how parallel to the world that you live in versus the military as well, where mentorship is a big thing, growing and all of those things. So can't thank you enough for what you do. It's like such a cool, I could sit there and just talk about your job the whole time.
Thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
We'll dive into the questions that we have set so that way the audience has the background now, and we've talked about, we've delivered financial education and personal development programs to athletes across high schools, athletic departments, even transitional environments, which I think is huge. And you've
Uh,
reached more than 500 students. And now that NIL has made the same young athletes publicly valued financial targets, and they have to be on social media and they have to be putting out information and all of these kind of things to get the recruiters involved. From where you sit working directly inside these communities, how wide is the gap between what student athletes understand about their financial visibility and what the visibility actually makes them vulnerable to?
There is a huge gap, a huge one, because think about it. The athletic departments, or more so the coaches, they already have a lot on their plate just doing that job. And so there's a lot of things that go missed, especially in the high school space. You don't have a lot of funds on the collegiate level. So you don't have these personnel and these people that are there to do these things. And there are people like us that may reach out and offer that assistance, but it's like, we're good. And so I
Yeah.
don't know if they really know the significance or really the importance of that type of information. And so there's a lot of visibility for the youth, but then there's not literacy of the vulnerability. And that's where those issues, step in. And I've seen it firsthand. And so, with the athletes, when they're thinking NIL, they're thinking, money, clout, followers, like I made it, but not the things that are behind that. So where's the source of these funds coming from? What are they asking you to do? What is the scope of work? How long do you have to be tied into this thing? Who are these people that are positioning themselves as agents or mentors or the big brother that's trying to help you. So it's a lot of vulnerability there for sure. A lot of financial predators, and again, I just don't know if the people that are around them really know the significance of that. It's kind of like when you tell a student, like, hey, don't drink and drive because, you can crash into a tree. And it's like, it's not going to happen to me. Like, we see these things
Yeah.
few far in between on the news, like, oh, it's fine. And it's like, no, you need to get on top of this. This is a real thing. And a lot of issues are not sensationalized. So if you don't see
Yep.
them on the news, you think that they don't happen, but they do happen every day.
Yeah, and it's 2 things, right, that you mentioned that really, stood out to me, and it comes from our previous conversation about identity. If you're on social media and you're posting what you think is important to you or retweeting or whatever the case may be, gives that threat actor, those financial predators, the ability to say, "Hey, this person cares about," we could say, like, dogs or animals. So we're gonna say that we're an NIL thing that's focused on helping abandoned animals and kinda go after those identity things that are core to that person to go after.
Absolutely.
And then the other
Absolutely.
part was the literacy. Like we discussed before, it might be one slide that says, "Hey, don't talk to NIL representatives on Instagram," and then they move on. If you have the local dealership reach out to you if you're in high school and they're like, "Hey, we wanna give you a free rental car and $10,000 to come to a commercial," it could spiral, right? And that those students are gonna jump on that, and it's just unfortunate that we're not building the actual literacy within really the adult cohort as well to educate the youth on these risks.
Yeah, I think there's something needed for the parents as well. They have the most contact with the child, and sometimes they don't know. They show up, they support their child to the games, they assume whatever program is involved is going to teach them and give them that information. And so some of the coaches really don't know. Athletic directors don't know.
Yeah,
And there's a lot of information that's not being given to them, but you don't know what you don't know. And so, to your point, yeah, you see this car, you see this deal, you see these exciting things, but it's like, well, again, what's being asked of you?
yeah,
What are these missing things? And if, as we know, when you are on the rise of things, people come out of everywhere offering
yep,
opportunity. And when you've never heard of, some of these things before, you never seen that type of money, you never worked a job, it's like, wow. And that wow is where there's a lot
yeah.
of vulnerability.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the emotional high and the financial windfall, all of these things. It's so crazy. But to help with that, like your program focuses on building discipline, identity, and financial habits as the financial as life or for life beyond sports. And in cyber, we always talk about like security culture in almost identical terms. It has to be built from the inside out. You can't just bolt it when something's already broken. When you're working with student athletes who have a growing public profile and potentially have the opportunity for significant NIL income, what does the foundational financial and identity work kind of look like in practice? And how does it create that self awareness that would translate into better digital and financial?
Really, really great question. So I would say, like we mentioned before, the identity piece, like knowing your values and your identity first. So before we talk about money, we have to talk about who you are and what you stand on. So what are your non-negotiables? Like what won't you do for money? What are your long-term visions? Who do you want to be after football? And do these deals align with that, or does it just speak to a right now situation? So this really becomes the filter for deals and DMs and opportunities and people reaching out. And then the financial literacy aspect of it and basic risk awareness, so reading contracts at a basic level. We're not a legal team, but you should be able to interpret certain jargon or be able to use certain, sources. You can Google, hey,
Mhm.
what does this mean? What do these words mean? So really understanding basic level of contract and like scope of work, understanding taxes, because I've seen a lot of times, even on game shows, people will win $1 million or 250,000 and they think they're not thinking, "Oh, I have to pay taxes on this." So
Yeah.
understanding that whatever that principal price is, or that money, that sticker price, that market that they're going to give you is not always what you take home. And that can be a very compromising situation as well. So helping them understand taxes, recurring obligations, so you may get a deal and they ask, oh, can you post on social media? And you think, oh, I'm just posting this one post. But no, we were asking you to post, 3 times a day for 5 years and you have
Yeah.
to remain at the same team. So it's
Oh,
those things that they may, not see, or, some of those too good to be true offers, why fast money often comes, uh, with hidden control or exploitation. And we talk about the digital space as well, a little bit different from you, but um well, two-factor authentication for sure. Unlike the average person, there's a lot more people that's looking at you trying to get in. And with that, if somebody gets into your social media account, one, they can be answering for deals for you, extracting money, or two, they can ruin your reputation by posting things that aren't appropriate or not in representation of who you are. I've seen, maybe not in the sports space, but other spaces as well, when you're posting your location in real time and people are able to find out where you are. You just don't always know people's intentions. So being able to speak to protecting themselves digitally, relationally as well. So separating personal business accounts, why you do that, being able to audit things. So we really do a full scope of work in that space. It's like a football NIL playbook
yeah,
type of thing.
absolutely, and I think it's so important, like you highlighted, people often, or I should say sensationalize, media outlets like to sensationalize when an athlete has a burner account, but in reality, burner accounts are so important for athletes because it gives them space outside of their athletic identity to explore things that they like, and granted, it's important that they use the burner account for those purposes. We've seen other people get burned for burner accounts, but it really is important because, like you said, it's one of those things, one, for security to keep your personal and business separate, but also for, like, your mental well-being is if you're only posting athletic things, the algorithm is only gonna give you athletic things, and now you're stuck in that headspace of, like, "This is all ever gonna be." So it's really cool to see that.
Yeah, that's a really good point there. I actually have multiple social medias as well, and it's fun to be able to curate your feed and your algorithm and where you can learn different things. And, you have to get outside of the sport. It can very much become year round no matter what sport you're in because, they have springtime, they have, your off season, the stuff that you do, training, things like that. And it is important to get out of that because, again, it can become attached to your identity. And once that sport is gone, whatever sport is, you may feel broken, unsure, don't know who you are, where to go and what to do next. And so to your point, dabbling into other things, other interests, learning stuff outside of that is very important.
Factor authentication, and that is so important, especially in the financial side of things. We've seen so many attacks or hacks occur where people get essentially their bank account drained, and it was like, "Okay, well, what was the security on the account?" And it was like, "Oh, username and password." And they don't athletes particularly because, they aren't as well educated on it, are risks in this regard because if they're just, "Hey, username and password," and you're sitting on $250,000 even. is a ton of money for a cyber criminal, and it's much more appealing to go after that quarter of a million or even 100,000 versus the average American whose bank account has maybe, I think I saw today, $10,000 in their savings account, right? If they know you're making money and you have to publicize it, those financial aspects of it as well are just so important.
Yeah, absolutely. And you have a lot of people around you and a lot of hands in the pot. You know, you have financial advisors, you may have the agents, you have different people in it. So you have to be sure on who you can trust. And we don't always know 100%, but you should be educated on your finances. You may have someone that handles it, but that doesn't mean don't check and don't stay afloat. You know, as you're transitioning and switching people on your team, bringing new people in, updating your passwords, changing those things, you know, keeping an audit of who has access to what is very important as well.
Yeah, and it's crazy because I just always think of Shohei Ohtani, the best baseball player to arguably ever play, and his translator was just funneling money from him, millions of dollars from him. So if it can happen to Shohei,
It can happen to
yeah,
anybody.
exactly. But moving on, we you have worked with juvenile detention centers and transitional environments alongside that high school and athletics, collegiate athletic space, which means you've seen pretty much the whole range of circumstances and risk profiles. We talked a little bit about cyber criminals and financial predators that actively target young athletes in these vulnerable transition spaces. And this could look like the recruit who just signed, player navigating a transfer portal, or even an athlete aging out of a program with no professional contract waiting for them. From your experience in those like transitional spaces, where are young athletes most exposed and what's missing from that support systems that are supposed to catch
Really, really, really great question. I feel like the transfer portal, it gets talked about a lot, but not in the space of that vulnerability. So every transition, it's like a crack, you know, because you have people that are just really ready and willing to get any and every opportunity. You know, you're in a space where you're unsure, you don't really know your next steps, you don't know if you're going to get picked up. Like you really just don't know. You don't have that solid foundation like you would have before you've entered that portal. So you know, what could happen is, you know, there might be fake investment opportunities outside of people stealing money from you, like draining your accounts. It could also be, hey, if you invest $1,500,
Mm,
we can get you to play with so and so. It's those types of things, those unverified agents. You know, people can present themselves as whatever they want, but actually knowing how to fact check and those things are really important as well. Transfer portal, it's very emotionally raw. It's uncertain, you know, it's desperate time. So at that time, you're more likely to trust the wrong people, you know, or person promising connections. You might sign bad deals just because you know, to feel a little bit more secure. This is when players feel like the most disposable. You know, they cling to anything. You might be aging out. You know, we've know like a lot of the rules and things have shifted as well. So again, going back to that identity crisis, who am I without football? It might be the perfect time for a scam, a business opportunity, or predatory contracts that promised post career income. So it could be you going into the portal, it could be you aging out, you know, and not having some of those same opportunities as well. So I think it's very important to what's needed in these support systems is just proactive
mm,
education. As you know, it's a lot easier if you tell someone something ahead of time versus, oh my gosh, it already happened. Now what?
yeah.
You know, so most schools, they don't really do compliance meetings, so that's needed for sure. And not just survival training, like what do you do if this, you know, just that full preparation, that bulletproof. Okay, if this, then this type of thing. I think the most part we tell them what's legal, but not necessarily what's
Mm,
dangerous. And so that's a part of that proactive education that's needed as well. You know, we have a lot of guides and a lot of rule books and those types of things, but not the dangers. I think that's not really talked about a lot. We need integrated support, you know, like the financial education that we do, the mental health, to your point, cybersecurity, brand management. Athletes just need one ecosystem that can cover different things because when you have a lot of different workshops, a lot of different people, it can become just these one-off things that you may talk about, you forget, you're on to the next thing. But if there's a full ecosystem, there's people that are working together to protect them, it will be a lot easier. And then given those real world examples are essential, you know, naming, like you say, the famous baseball player, like naming situations where, people have lost money to fake agents or their accounts got hacked or they signed deals that they couldn't get out of. So we have to make it
Yeah.
real. That's the thing. We have to make it real because when you don't make it real, it again becomes like that distance, like, oh, that's them, that's not
Yeah.
me.
That's a great point, right? Is like bringing reality, as harsh as it may be, but like it is exactly what the world is right now. And they need to understand operating in that space. And you were talking about families earlier, and it reminded me of the Florida. It was in Florida. There was a high school athlete, and I think it happened in Connecticut as well, where the family got scammed because they were like, "Hey, we'll bring these opportunities to your daughter or your son, and you just pay us $20,000, and we'll get them all. That 20,000 will turn into 200,000 for your son or your daughter." And the family's left vulnerable. So it's really interesting that within that support system, and I hear you constantly mentioning, is the family, and it's I think it goes unaccounted for a little
Yeah, and they're the ones that's paying. When you're young, you don't have a job, it has to go through the parent. They have to agree, they have to support. And a lot of times when you're excited, you feel like you have the golden child. They just need the opportunity. A lot of even in basketball, like AAU, like or football, these summer camps, like they're very expensive. And there's a mindset of you have to pay to play. So if there is a high dollar amount, you're not really looking at it sideways because you feel like, okay, sports are expensive anyway. We have to travel, we have to move around, you have to pay to be in these spaces. And so it's a lot easier to be vulnerable where if somebody mentions $20,000, it doesn't seem so far off
Nope.
because it's like, oh, okay, that makes sense. If it's a higher cost, and that means it's not accessible to everybody. So this is like an exclusive type
Yeah.
of thing. And families are definitely a part of, that vulnerability for
And it's
sure.
part of that support system, right? Even when you're maybe a junior in college or even a pro athlete, how many times have we heard pro athletes be like, "My mother or my father is my mentor, my wisdom," and I never even thought about it from that educational space of like, "Hey, they need to be involved in this."
They absolutely like they're the ones typically at the time on the early age, they're the ones with the money. They're going to the decision maker. People that do scams, very calculated.
Yeah.
Not a one off.
Yeah.
Okay, when you're doing these interviews, oh, to your point, yeah, my mom, handles this, or my dad, he's really big on this. It's like, cool, got
Yep.
it. I know exactly who to go
Yep.
to. Let me do my research. Let me look at their page. Oh, they like dogs. That's where
Yeah.
we'll start the conversation.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have a dog too.
Yep.
Just building that relationship, bringing the walls down, seeming
Yeah.
legit,
Yeah.
and then, attacking.
Yep. 100%. And, speaking of that, like the NIL era that we keep, talking about has made student athletes into personal brands almost overnight. It seems like every day there's like a new, "Hey, this athlete has signed a $500,000 contract," and you've never even heard of that athlete, and it's like, "Okay, what's going on?" But with social media presence, public financial valuations, and commercial partnerships even now, before they have that financial literacy or digital awareness to manage it safely. It doesn't seem like it exists right now. Your work as a business and mindset consultant and a certified life coach focuses on building that strong personal foundation and improving those financial habits as we discussed. What would you say are the most dangerous blind spots right now for young athletes who are suddenly public financial figures, and how do those blind spots translate into real world risk?
Really great question. So I would say one of the blind spots that we've talked about a bit is they think that followers equal safety. So
Mm,
everybody knows me, everybody's going to vouch for me, everybody's going to have my back. Like I know I'm good. I'm liked by the general public. I have a large family, everyone's here protecting me, but the reality of that is, visibility attracts scammers, stalkers, people who study their behaviors. And so when you falsely think I'm well liked as you're looking at the comments, everything's positive. Oh, we support you. We love you. Those types of things. again, just being vulnerable, not really knowing because you think everyone's on your side. And so that's a huge blind spot right there. Or trusting the wrong adults, unvetted trainers, these uncles or
Yeah.
cousins or agents, these brand reps. Just because someone is older doesn't mean that they're wiser. And I think sometimes when you're young and you're talking to somebody that presents themselves as been there, done that, naturally, understandably, you are going to trust them. And so trusting the wrong adults is huge. That's who you're around. That's who's giving you the opportunities. That's who's giving the money. That's who's making the decisions. And just the students really need to be helped on. It doesn't matter your age per se.
Yeah.
With age can come wisdom, but knowing that that wisdom could also be, I know how to, I know how to do a sneak attack here.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's interesting because I just think of I know my family, there's always that one uncle, right, who knows better than everybody else. I've been around enough family barbecues where it's like, "Oh, you should have done that with your money, blah, blah, blah," and I can only imagine these athletes who have uncles or aunts at the same level of, like, "You have to invest in this because this is the next big thing," and they just get taken advantage of.
Exactly. And you're not going to necessarily think it's your family. Like, it's my family. They have
Exactly.
my best interest. But yes, there's always that one person that just knows everything. Oh, you should have done this. You should have invested in this. They're always an expert. Also, students not seeing themselves as a business,
Mm,
that they may see NILs like extra cash, just not a business with risk, or not really thinking about the liability and the exposure. If you're a brand, you're also a target. Brands get sued, brands get hacked, brands get
yeah,
exploited. That's something I don't really think that they think of. Like, oh, I'm, this person that plays this sport. You are an entity. You are a brand. Like, this money is going to your business. People attack businesses.
mhm.
We see in headlines all the time, this company's data got breached, that somebody's suing for this or that. Like, people will come after you, especially if they see the deals, they see the money, they see the notoriety. To not look at yourself as a business would be
And,
crazy.
it feels I feel a bit cold-hearted sometimes when I'm talking to colleges about it because college athletes have now become business assets is what they are. If you look at what, the most prominent example that always sticks out in my head is Travis Hunter and, Shedeur Sanders. They
Yes,
go to
yes.
Colorado. Colorado football is non-existent from, like, the early 2000s. They go there, and all of the sudden, Colorado football is extremely relevant again, and, it's cold-hearted, but at the same time, now you have, like, state money going into NIL and all of these things, like, you are a business asset, and I think it's so fascinating, because usually a business operating at, like, $100,000 of profit a year, they have a whole IT department, they have a whole cybersecurity department that's protecting them, and like you said, that this brand right now is is an athlete in their phone. It's not a whole business behind them. It's not structured like that. So, so interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And even tapping into the business side of it, right? So you may feel like you're really great at the sport, and you may be, if we're looking at the stats, but are you bringing in ticket sales? Are people coming to see you? Are you helping the overall business? Because you're a business within a business. And so being, picked up or, having these offers or being drafted isn't always solely stats. It's like we want to win, which is going to help trickle down business in general, but also are you sought after? Are people looking
Yeah.
for you? So again, if you're not thinking about yourself as a business, marketing, things like that, your talent can just, you could be, just another person that maybe could have made
Yep.
it and your time
And
is up.
it's taking advantage of those situations too, right? Where maybe you don't have a life after college in the professional realm of sports. But if you're able to build a solid brand and a business while you have that opportunity of visibility or NIL money, it's so crucial versus understanding like bad publicity and how society is going to react if you do things on social media as well, of how you're portraying your business of speeding tickets or brandishing weapons or whatever it could be versus, hey, I'm out here in the community doing community support because, again, this is kind of my identity and this is what I value and this is what I'm going to do. it's interesting how that can all translate as you're discussing during that transitional period and then also afterwards of that blind spot area.
Yeah, and another blind spot I would say is under underestimating the digital risk. So
Mm,
going back to what you do in the cybersecurity space, right? So reusing passwords, clicking random links is huge. So when you get those emails that seem like these deals and hey, click here to start the application, who knows what pop-up can come on there, what virus, how someone can get into your computer if you don't really know, okay, I have to go take it to get scrubbed or, do these
yeah.
types of things. Next thing you know, wait, where did my money go? How did they get into my account? You have all your logins on your computer. So it's like you could be one hack away from costing yourself deals, your reputation, even physical
Yep.
safety.
And how many times have we seen draft stock slide because you tweeted in 2012 or hey, this personal picture on your phone is now out there or whatever the case may be. So great point. Absolutely great point.
Yeah, and I think the last one I would probably say is just not understanding the long term impacts on things. And so, stuff that you posted pre being an athlete, maybe stuff on your burner page when people connect you to that burner page,
Yep.
different things like that, you can delete, but screenshots are screenshots.
What's the
And by the time they float around, it's permanent.
what
Everybody's
what's the
seen it.
saying? The internet is undefeated, right? Like it's
The internet is undefeated.
it's
The
just
digital footprint is real. It's
yeah,
permanent.
absolutely. And I only see more and more of it happening because there's also like in college sports, particularly like the rabid fan bases are wild. So you have these like
Yeah.
heated rivalries, all of these kind of things. And I can only imagine going into the future, like an Ohio State, Michigan type situation where you have a bunch of really smart college kids out there that are going to be like, hey, I'm going to scrub their profile and I'm going to find something that's super either derogatory or inflammatory. And I'm going to make sure the world knows about this. And I'm going to make sure my side is more likable.
Mhm. Mhm. Absolutely.
It's just wildness. But for our last question, this may be my favorite one, but you've said that once NIL valuations become public, they stop being recruiting buzz and start functioning as open source financial intelligence. And that the responsibility to protect these athletes can't be an afterthought. And I thought that was brilliantly said. If you were advising an athletic director or collective leadership right now on what genuine athlete protection programs look like, one that goes beyond the compliance like we've discussed and actually addresses the financial, digital, and identity risk that these young people are navigating, where would you kind of tell them to start and what does that look like?
Great question. I would say you're not just managing talent, you're managing
Mm,
risk. And so really be mindful of that because I think we just put a lot of emphasis on developing the player from an athletic or physical perspective, but just not holistically. And so you will want to build a protection ecosystem. Again, not that one-off workshop, that one slide that we talked about, like a real ecosystem. So ongoing program that will integrate financial education, cybersecurity basics, brand and reputation management, mental health and identity work. These are really missing, especially in the high school space for sure. So if this is just like an annual meeting or like a checkbox, that's where it becomes a problem. So we really need to think about building an ecosystem and making this a part of something that's consistent in the program. Partnering with people who have lived in both worlds,
mm,
someone who understands sports culture, financial systems, digital risk, not just that one person. Like, I think it's great that alumni comes back and they've played the sport before, but those that have actually lived both lives. So you need someone that can translate from a space of they can speak locker room talk, but they also can speak that risk management all in the same sentence and making it make sense. Because when you talk about certain things, while they are needed, it can go on deaf ears if you're using lofty language or stuff that's not speaking to your audience. So you want someone that has that relatability as well. I would say create clearer protocols for NIL vetting, a due diligence, being able to vet agents and brands and collective, actually doing research. So the cybersecurity literacy, the financial literacy, but then also media literacy, really understanding how to do research. Put some of those academic
yeah.
skills to use
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah,
And yeah, no, and I it's just so fascinating because it's one of those things. I think oftentimes what I see are universities, at least from the outside perspective, when I scroll through LinkedIn or Instagram and all of these things where the universities are flexing of like, "Hey, we signed this deal with Nike, and we signed this deal with Adidas," I mean, name it, or local restaurant, "and we're gonna bring in this NIL money." Everything is focused on, like, as you discussed, financial opportunity and financial growth for the student, which I think is fantastic. But, like, as you stated, there's not the equal training or program that says, "This is how we're gonna teach you to protect all of this money that we just brought in."
yes, absolutely. And we have to invest in like a full culture of this. And so actually have the coaches be trained to reinforce these things in this ecosystem, protection language. And we definitely ensure to reward the athletes for their athleticism, but other things as well. Hey, this person got a good grade today. Oh, this person reported that they, updated their password, or hey, they got a deal and they did the checklist and did their due diligence. These types of things that they can achieve or look forward to outside of the athletic achievement. Because, just by nature, I know that, and it's men and women, when you're in a sport, you're competitive.
Yeah,
And so give them other ways to compete that will really help them as well. Speak their language, incorporate, fun things, and give them milestones to reach and to achieve as
that's
well.
great. I think that's so important in a training program, like you just stated, of hey, we're going to compete against each other here. And at the end of it, what you're creating is a better human as a whole. You're getting a better athlete 100% because they're more confident. They've learned a lot about protecting themselves, but you're also getting a better human because now they're going to carry that with them throughout their life, really, even outside of athletics, to be like, hey, when I'm a financial manager or when I'm doing this and when I'm not playing sports anymore, I know not to click that link, or I know not to donate to something unless I've vetted them. And you're teaching them really a great way to live outside of sports as well.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, very much in need. I'm happy you were able to experience and be around fellow player development people. It is a lot of work. I will say in the space, it's normally one or two people per team. And when you're dealing with teams of 90 to 150 people, it's really hard to track. So there needs to be a full ecosystem, a lot of people partnering and coming in. If we can go and buy the ticket to sit there and enjoy the game, then we can assist in protecting them as well.
I love it. Well, Diamond, this has been phenomenal. It's everything I hoped it would be and more. So I cannot thank you enough for coming on Hacked by Halftime.
Thank you, and I appreciate you having me.